This is Back Roads of Illinois, server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. Today is edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We're glad you're here on a Tuesday afternoon. I am Cesar Delgado. I am your host of today's program. I am here at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau in Ottawa, Illinois. Yes, Ottawa, Illinois is my hometown. I'm at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau for the weeds presentation from the University of Illinois Extension with Dr. Aaron Hanger. I will be interviewing with him on weeds control for this season in north central Illinois with herbicides. Then I will be interviewing with Kayla Kiefer for the Lasalle County Farm Bureau. She is a Lasalle County Farm Bureau Manager for Ottawa, Illinois. I will be interviewing her about top priority for Lasalle County Farm Bureau for this year. Otherwise, we were in the Lasalle County Farm Bureau for the weeds presentation from the University of Illinois. We are here at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau with Dr. Aaron Hanger from the University of Illinois Extension for the weeds presentation for this growing season at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau in Ottawa, Illinois. Hi, Dr. Hanger. Nice to see you at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau. Let's discuss about weeds control for this season in our area, north central Illinois. Could you tell us what do you recommend for weeds control for our area?
Well, as most people are probably aware, with the recent couple of weeks where we've had some fairly moderate to warm temperatures, a lot of green is now starting to show up in the fields. Predominantly, these are many of our winter annual weed species. And it's always a good idea for folks to try to get all vegetation under control before anything is planted in that field. We always can say, our intention is we're going to plant, we'll take care of controlling the weeds at some point after we plant, but as we typically relearn every year, and that is that the weather really controls what we're able to do. And so those established weeds can actually be fairly competitive with an emerging corn crop or an emerging soybean crop. So trying to get weeds managed before we put any seed in the ground is always a very, very good first step. Given what we see with some of the challenging species that we have in northern Illinois, whether that's giant ragweed or burr cucumber or water hemp, the utility of pre-emergence herbicides and the importance of a pre-emergence herbicide only increases over time. Now, we went through an era, of course, back in the late 1990s as the glyphosate-resistant technology came into the marketplace, where we really moved away from utilizing residual herbicides. But given the resistance issues that we now face, predominantly with our water hemp populations in the state, it's really of paramount importance that we use a good foundation herbicide program close to planting time in order to try to reduce the number of, whether again it's giant ragweed or water hemp plants, that we'll have to try to control in the post-emergence application.
How about the pigweeds for this time of year?
It's still a little bit early to see any emergence of either the monoecious or the dioecious pigweeds. Now, we're talking about this toward the end of March. A lot of that is going to depend upon the weather from this point on. I wouldn't be surprised if we would start seeing some of the things like water hemp that will be coming up probably around the mid to late part of April. But if we have some elevated air temperatures, if soil temperatures increase fairly rapidly, that emergence could be moved up several weeks. So A lot of what we used to use as kind of our old playbook for, X number of days or weeks after planning to come in and do your post application, so much of that anymore is so dependent upon what we do before that point. Do we have a good residual herbicide? Do we have one that remains effective against populations that have evolved resistance to many herbicides from many different classes? So it's really the paramount of importance is that once the crop emerges, of course, we have to keep an eye on it. We have to do the scouting to know when is it going to be the appropriate time to make that post application before any of the emerged weeds get too tall.
How much of gallon of water?
The carrier volume is typically more important when we get into the post-emergence arena. But there's really no rule of thumb per se, because most of the foliar product labels are going to specify what that carrier volume should be, or at least a range of what that carrier volume should be. If you have a herbicide that is very limited translocation after it's absorbed into the weed, typically those require very thorough coverage of the vegetation. So you can generally always achieve better coverage at higher gallonages. Now, by higher, we're talking instead of maybe 10 gallon to the acre, maybe that's 15 to 20 gallon to the acre. Other products that are translocated within the plant following their uptake, typically we use less carrier volume for those. So, 10 to 12 would be fairly common for those products.
What are watching for this legislation session in Springfield about herbicides regularity?
Well, it has actually been a concern that we've had for the last couple of legislative sessions. There more than once there's been a bill that's been introduced to ban the sale and application of ester forms of 2,4-D in the state of Illinois. That one is not likely to move out of committee for this legislative session, but again, in the future, it's likely to come back again. And another one that we're continuing to monitor, to watch, is a requirement for a proposed piece of legislation to require any pesticide applications within a half mile of a school or park, that notification has to be given to the school, to the park, within 72 hours of when that application is scheduled to be made. So there's a lot of uncertainty with the distance. Why is it a half a mile? Why 72 hours? Why would we need to make a notification if an application is made when the actual wind is blowing away from these particular areas? So we're keeping an eye on that one. I think there'll be some changes to it, but we're continuing to monitor that one.
How about for 2D for right now? You mentioned before.
One of the things that we really want to emphasize this year around 2,4-D is its use in soybean varieties that are resistant to it, and those would be the Enlist soybean system. There are only 2 available labeled post-emergence products containing 2,4-D that can be applied in crop in Enlist soybeans. Those would contain the choline salt formulation of 2,4-D, in particular either Enlist 1, which is 2,4-D choline by itself, or Enlist Duo, which is a premix of 2,4-D choline and glyphosate. There are no other salt formulations that can be used in crop, and we certainly do not want to use ester formulations in crop. Esters tend to have higher potential for volatility than salt formulations, and again, if we're concerned about off-target movement, applying an ester formulation in crop when air temperatures are typically going to be, relatively higher than what they are when we use an ester in a burn down scenario, that is really something we discourage people from doing because it increases the likelihood of seeing damage to non-target vegetation across our landscape.
Do you have any final thoughts on this growing season?
Well, we're fixing to find out how it works out. It's hard to sit here at this time of year and make a lot of accurate predictions. We can do a lot of guessing, but we'll have to look back about next September and October to see how close we actually were. So we certainly wish everybody a very safe and productive 2025 growing season.
Thanks, Dr. Hanger. I'm joining with Kayla Kiefer for the Lasalle County Farm Bureau in Ottawa, Illinois. Kayla is a manager at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau. How are you today, Kayla?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
What is your top priority for the agenda at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau for this year? Could you tell our audience about it?
That is a very good question. So each week we have a different hot topic. This week we're focusing on Endangered Species Act, and we hosted a meeting today to help share and give information to all of our members and community members.
Are you watching on the act in Washington for right now?
We are blessed, and Illinois Farm Bureau has a legislative team that watches all the legislation that affects agriculture in DC and in Springfield and locally. So I follow the emails, and we kind of go by the recommendations that they are giving and guide us on so that we have time to focus on things more locally.
Kayla, how many people are concerned with the commodities markets, especially in the cash markets and right here locally?
I am sure everybody is always worried about the commodity prices, the prices of exports and imports, always, every day. So it's a hot topic every single day of every single harvest and planting season. So that's always something that we're watching.
Can you tell us about the Lasalle County Farm Bureau to sever to the farmers in Lasalle County?
So Lasalle County Farm Bureau is a nonprofit organization that represents farmers legislatively and information. We host different informational meetings like we did today, the Endangered Species Act. And we also make sure to keep all of our members informed of hot legislative topics that they need to be aware of.
What's next for next week about the board meeting?
Our board meeting was last week, so we have 3 more weeks till we're planning for our next board meeting. And you know what? I'm not really sure what's on the agenda yet. We kind of take it day by day and see what hot topics need to be brought up and talked about.
What is your final thoughts on this spring season at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau?
I know all of my members are excited to get in the field, and I hope we have a healthy, safe planting season, and everybody can get their crops in a timely manner, and everybody comes home safe to their families.
Thanks, Kayla. This is Kayla Kiefer for the Lasalle County Farm Bureau in Ottawa, Illinois. We are here at the Lasalle County Farm Bureau for the Weeds presentation from the University of Illinois.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to visit with you again.
Thanks to Dr. Aaron Hanger from the University of Illinois Extension and Kayla Kiefer from the Lasalle County Farm Today. This has been Back Roads of Illinois. I am Cesar Delgado. You have a great day.